I was asked to bring a sample of my water in for testing. First year I lived here, I think, and I had just put a reverse osmosis system in my house. They tested my water and said, oh my God, don't drink this, don't use it for anything except taking a bath, because it was so full of phosphates, full of manganese, iron, all kinds of pollutants. I had to take the reverse osmosis filter out because it clogged up after less than a minute. And so I have been buying bottled water for 16 years because the water from my well isn't usable for drinking or cooking. I put in a water softener. It at least keeps some of the iron and the manganese out. But water is something that is so vital that we take for granted. We think it falls from the sky and it just stays pristine. And believe me, when it's in the sky, it's not even pristine. It's the earth that filters that out. And if we don't have those filters in place, then that becomes a real problem. I grew up in Mahoning County, close to Little Beaver Creek. Little Beaver Creek starts in Salem, and I lived about 7 miles outside of Salem. And we loved the creek, my brothers and sisters and I. It ran through my uncle's farm. He had a dam. We went ice skating in the winter. I was too old to ice skate, so they moved me around on a sled. We went swimming in the creek in the summer. And this first poem is about that creek, which flows into the Ohio, just a couple miles down the street. The water was too deep in the pool by the bridge for me to stand. I watched from the bank as my brother and cousin swished cool water around their bodies, then sank into the pool to swim. Winding long grass around my hand, I was startled by their screams, their dash from the creek, their run for home. Pumping my short legs as fast as I could, I ran too. By the time I reached the kitchen, my brother was sitting bent over the table, his arms above his head, his hands clasped, knuckles white. I peered around Mother's back, watching as she scraped one blue-tip match after another across her thumbnail, applied the fire to the leech, pulled it from my brother's back, dropped it into the galvanized pail. She shook the fire from the tiny wooden stem left over and over again until all the leeches were gone. 20 years later, no leeches could live in that water. Myrex, dioxins, other carcinogens and poisons leached into the streamhead, inching slowly with the current until they reached the pasture overlooked by the school, where my brother played baseball and I cheered. In spring, that pasture was alive with wildflowers. But now a tall chain-link fence coursed through the meadow in the hope that nothing more would die as the Herefords had from drinking water from the creek. They drank and fell over dead. Now signs sprouted along the roadside warning of danger. Do not drink, swim in, or have any contact with this water, the signs warned. As the water rolled over the bottom, as the summer sun dried the water, poisons entered the mud. The creek where we played as children, the creek where I swam at church camp, the creek that flowed into the Ohio was a toxic dump, unfit for human contact. Embedded in mud, poisons in all seasons moved, yet toxins lay at the foot of the steep hill. The park named for the creek showed its wooded beauty, but there would be no lodge, no development for this park until the contamination is gone. And that's Beaver Creek State Park, and that is the reason there is no lodge at Beaver Creek State Park. Those of you who have had classes from me realized that I have a huge problem with the kind of contamination that we've done to this world and that we have in this world. And part of that, it stems from contamination in the 1950s, 1940s and 1950s from above ground testing of nuclear weapons, atomic weapons, and later hydrogen and nuclear. This is a poem called Fallout. And there's an epigraph to this poem. I hold one share in the corporate earth and am uneasy about the management. The correct amount of strontium with which to impregnate the topsoil is no strontium. We sat at the dinner table, 7 of us, eating beef from our cows, mashed potatoes, corn from the garden. I don't know what this new nonsense will mean, Father said. Radioactivity in the milk, strontium 90, whatever that is. The government is going to tell us again what we have to do, whether our milk is fit for sale. If they decide it's not, what will we do? I listened, an 8-year-old, anxious to know what the grown-up talk meant. What is that stuff? My brother asked. They say it's fallout from those nuclear tests. The wind blows it across the country. The rain washes it into the ground. Cows eat grass. The milk is radioactive. They're saying the milk isn't safe. I looked at the half glass of my milk, raw milk, cooled and dipped straight from the cooler. From the corner of my eye, I saw the others too. When the ban on DDT came down, Father was disgusted. Don't know what we'll do to keep down the flies, he said. I remember the sprayer, my job, to spray the cows in summer when they were in the barn being milked. I was so short I had to tip the sprayer back. I remember the dirty, sticky lines the spray made as it ran down my arms to my elbows. I remember wiping my face with a sticky hand, waiting for my bath to feel clean. When the sand ran out, my brother and I played in agricultural slag, byproduct of the mills, full of manganese and other metals. We built roads, caves, landing strips for airplanes. When my brother was undergoing chemotherapy, I realized how like my German grandfather he looked. Same nose, high cheekbones, shiny forehead. Only his feet were like my father's, high arched, curled tight. Within a year, he was dead. When my sister had her bone marrow destroyed to treat her leukemia, I realized how much she looked like my father's mother. The same English features, blue eyes. And Jay, who could forget the sister who died when only 24? The image of mother, but skeleton thin, curled tight in pain, the tumors rising higher than any of her other parts. 3 of 5 dead to cancer. Wonderful lives. I think this is probably why I feel the environmental information is so precious to us and why we need to eat it. This is a later poem about my own children. The pink crabapple grew in front of the house, plagued by black spot. One hot August afternoon, I decided to spray. Poured hardware store orchard spray into the container, 7 malathion, other poisons whose names I do not remember. Children played in the yards. My sons, friends, daughter. The spray made rainbows that they ran through, laughing, shouting, raising their arms in delight. Sun golden, skin bared by sunsuits. They played. I sprayed still. When my friend emerged from her car shouting, "What are you doing? What the hell are you doing? Are you trying to poison my daughter? Don't you have any sense?" I stood still. Refugee from a farm where no one wore spraying attire, I stood shocked. Pesticides were friends. Pesticides would not hurt us. Why would in a school in eastern Kentucky that was 13 miles from a Superfund site. I didn't know that when I went there to teach. It was located in a town in the middle of the Daniel Boone National Forest, beautiful, pristine environment. I thought as I drove in, thought, oh, what a wonderful place to live. And then the oil from the petroleum refineries would collect on my windshield. And then I found out about Maxi Flats, and then I found out that nobody really cared about Maxi Flats. But this is a poem about that experience in Moorhead. Driving through the mountains to the university town that August day, the hills breathe, mist rising over the valleys. Set in the middle of the Daniel Boone National Forest, I believe this place to be pristine. 3 weeks later, I learned of Maxi Flats, a waste dump where people died reaching into the galleries. Uncovered, piled on top of earth, drums rusted, asbestos blue, radiation spewed, carcinogens. Leaching through limestone and sandstone, waste-infected streams created mutants. In my classes, faced with student cancers, breast cancer in men, prostate cancer, cervical cancer, thyroid cancer, I spoke of resisting environmental genocide. The students sat quiet. One young woman, thyroid removed, spoke out. We all know about this. We have to live with this, but we don't want to talk about it. Talking about it makes it too real. This next poem is about East Liverpool. The Brownfields Law defines a brownfield site as real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. Brownfield sites include all real property, including residential, as well as commercial and industrial properties. In the pottery's heyday, when East Liverpool, Ohio was called the pottery capital of the world, women licked tiny paintbrushes to apply gold leaf to china, and glazes were bright for the lead. When pottery was misshapen or broken, shards were dumped in lots the pottery zone or on the riverbank leading to the Ohio. Silicon filled the air, dust from the clay. Workers swallowed lead, breathed silicon, smoke from the kilns. 30 years after TS&T pottery closed, the building sat still, halts. Reminders of a past where whole families shaped clay, painted, fired. At the plant's close, buildings sat idle, although families lived in an office building and low-income housing developments mushroomed next to the site. Then buildings half raised, once torn off, weathered for 6 years. Asbestos insulation open to the rain, blowing in the wind. Shards of pottery still dot the riverbank. 2 silos that held clay and a smokestack stand. All that remains, the skeleton of the plant, piles of yellow brick, foundations under foundations, rooms below ground, a labyrinth needing to be filled. Water courses down the steep riverbank, carrying its burden of lead. Children, their parents, their grandparents, aunts, and uncles drink water from the river. Birth defects, mental retardation, and of course, cancers rate the area highest in health problems. Cancer here is endemic. Brownfields beget brownfields. Other dirty industries locate here. There is no way to prove blame. I'm looking at the clock to see how much time I have. I'm going to read another poem about my childhood. Most of these particular poems have been published in Canary, which is an online journal of the environment. If you look Canary magazine online, you can find them through the coal ran out, I rode with father to the strip mine, curving round and round the pit where machines cut into the earth, exposing the black diamonds that filled the pickup load. Close to our house, less than half a mile across the fields, the night filled with lights and noise, shovels creaked, bulldozers roared when a field close to our house was stripped. We slept fitfully to the sound of the machines. Stripped out topsoil under subsoil, I and my friends were forbidden to go there in fear of acid water. But we went, sneaking up the road, leftover shale crunching underfoot, blocking mounds of earth that would flow nothing, staring into ponds where no frogs, no fish lived. Soon new lights will disturb the country quiet of my home, as derricks fracture old seams releasing gas from shale. They too will create water in which nothing can live. As you probably know, from experience with some area that you've been close to that's a brownfields area, if not East Liverpool, they're abundant in northeastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, all across the country. There's really tremendous problem with pollution throughout the country. Environmental justice areas are areas where often drug abuse flourishes. I was taken by a poster that I saw that talked about heroin use and its connection to environmental justice. I had a daughter who became addicted to pain pills because of a rheumatoid arthritis condition. She had the pain pills cut off, so she switched to crack, and then she switched to heroin. And this poem was written before she died, but it is a poem about my daughter called Poppies. You know that there's a Greek myth about Demeter and Persephone. Demeter was the mother of Persephone and went into the underworld to try to save her and bring her back to the world so that there would be light and new growth again. And she was only able to do that for half of the year because Persephone was not to eat the pomegranate, but she couldn't resist it, and so she ate it, and thus had to go back to the underground for 6 months of the year. It's called Poppies. And the epigraph is from a poem by Evan Malone. She could have come home and been safe, and ended the story, and all heartbroken searching. But she reached out a hand and took the pomegranate. Only naughty knees gave away her youth that day. She felt she could not go on. I felt that too, lay on the floor beyond sobbing, drove to the lake, watched the geese, finally slept in the car. Once home I called, offered to come for her now, but she refused. Tired, I put on the white lawn nightgown trimmed with lace and fell into bed in the liminal dark. The phone. Insistent ringing startled me from sleep, but not so much as the voice on the other end of the line. Edie took some pills. They took her to emergency. Stomach pumped, face blue, lying flat on the gurney, head rolling to and fro as she rolled into intensive care. I wondered if she would live. We won't know the damage for several days, if then. The pills could have affected her liver or kidneys. When she woke, she said, "You are here. Why? If you died, I could not go on." Until she moved to the psych ward, I stayed. Without someone to watch, she would be tied to the bed. Neither she nor I could stand such restraint. We talked. Her brother carried her to the car, she said. He didn't care. He said I was heavy, dead weight. She has entered that dark world where nothing blooms over and over again, where euphoria and despair briefly, and she lost from the pathway out. That big stand between knowing and not. Again, reached for the wheel. No matter my warnings, no matter my love, poppies beckoned. Nothing was as strong as the taste of the apple. I thank you for listening and coming today. Lydia, should we call Megan up?
Yeah, we call Megan.
I didn't know if I could get through that without crying, but I guess I can. That's interesting. I can't see it. Right, camouflage. Ever since we started this conference, except for the first year, I think, Megan has been part of this conference, Megan Rogers, who assisted Dr. Burns, and who has been a stalwart member of our environmental club, who has done hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of work on this conference. And so, Lydia and I wanted to thank you, Megan. So we have a little gift for you if you will come over and get it.
I just want to say this conference wouldn't happen if Megan wasn't the holding it down. Even just now, she was getting our lunch and everything for us. So let's give Megan another hand. And before you go, Melanie is going to represent us also. We want to, this conference also, of course, was the brainchild of Dr. Swartz and Burns, and Melanie's going to say a few words.
I hate this stuff, you know? I got a lot coming in, I'm not sure.
Okay, I was going to talk a little bit about Dr. Swartz, or Patty, as everyone knows her. I haven't called her Dr. Swartz for quite a few years now. Patty's a passionate person. She's a selfless person. Patty's a person who gets things done. And most of all, Patty's a person who makes a difference. I don't really have any history with this conference or with the Environmental Club, but I can tell you how she's made a difference for me. that's just one of the, that's how she made a difference for me. She's made a difference. I'm just one of very many. Actually, just when I walked through the door, someone told me what a difference that she had made for them. I said, yeah, there are a lot of us. So Patty does make a difference. She makes a difference as a teacher. She makes a difference as a person. She makes a difference as a friend. And there's one more. I get so emotional. Yours is the worst.
I'm sorry.
There's one more thing I want to say, and that's Patty was always my go-to person whenever I needed a letter of recommendation. And she always, every time I read those letters, she always made me feel like I needed a tiara or something. And what I really wish was I had a tiara for you today, Patty. But I think there's something a little more practical over there. However you want to do this.
I avoid all situations like this, and I couldn't avoid this one.
Sure.
I didn't know what was happening, I probably would call and said, I'm really sick today, I don't think I can make it. You'll excuse me if I destroy the piano like that. Oh, this is, oh my God, how did you know that this is what I want?
You told me the other day that was the last time you did it.
Oh my. I like photography, I do photography, and I have wanted to have a really good photo printer like this one forever. And this is so expensive, you shouldn't have bought this. It is, I know because I pressed them. So, thank you so much.
That speech last year. You know the one I'm talking about, when you read that poem of mine.
Oh, yes.
So what we're gonna do now is, you can come and take, if you have a poster, go stand by your poster. The rest of you guys, please walk around. The people who did research will be by their poster, and you can share, they can share what they did. And then I'll go around as well. Also, Sabrina Jury here, she has certificates for the ones who are presenting their poster. So she'll go around to you guys and get you your certificates as well. So thank you guys again. And then lunch should be set out pretty soon. It's casual. Get your lunch if you can. Look at the posters, and we'll have our next speaker according to the schedule. I forget what time. What time is the next speaker?